It's up!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and EXPEL with you guys. Big news, unfortunately, out of Gaza. We'll get to that in a minute. And then Donald Trump up to his usual insane antics. We'll get to that as well. Big show ahead. Anna, take it away.
Well, we begin with the devastating war between Israel and Palestine. It is an absolute disaster in Gaza, and it's worth talking a little bit about that. So let's get to that story. Israeli officials have made clear that absolutely no humanitarian aid will enter the Gaza Strip unless the Hamas militants who kidnapped Israelis release those hostages. In a statement, Israel Katz, the Israeli energy minister, said the following: "Not a single electricity switch will be flipped on, not a single faucet will be turned on, and not a single fuel truck will enter until the Israeli hostages are returned home." And what that means is that the fate of millions of Palestinians lies in the hands of these terrorists, these Hamas militants, who are so savage and so brutal that they had no problem murdering over 1,000 civilians over the weekend, including literal babies. And I'm terrified for the Palestinian civilians who are now suffering as a result. This is a serious humanitarian crisis. They have nowhere to go, nowhere to flee. Their neighborhoods are being leveled. Airstrikes are constant. Israel is employing this tactic of leveling entire neighborhoods rather than just individual buildings. And Palestinians say they're unable to escape and have nowhere to go, and that entire families have been crushed under the rubble as a result of those airstrikes. On Wednesday, Gaza's only power station ran out of fuel and shut down, leaving only lights powered by scattered private generators. International aid groups warned of a worsening humanitarian crisis after Israel halted deliveries of food, water, fuel, and electricity to Gaza's 2.3 million people and prevented entry of supplies from Egypt. The war has claimed at least 2,700 lives on both sides. In fact, in Gaza alone, 1,500 people have been reported dead, with about 500 of them being children. I have more details for you, including the disastrous fate of the hospitals in Gaza in just a moment. Cenk, I'd like you to jump in.
Yeah, so look, my take on it is that it lies in two different sets of hands. So yes, Hamas can turn over the hostages and then presumably solve at least the electricity problem that Israel's threatening. But of course, just as a matter of fact, it is also in Israeli hands. And the Israeli government is the one making the decision to cut off the electricity. Now you could say they're justified. That's a question up for debate. I don't think it's justified, and I'll tell you why. If I have a family member that was kidnapped by Hamas and is in one of those tunnels, I would be both incredibly scared and enraged, and I would not want to have a conversation about Palestinians and innocent lives and this and that. I would want them to cut off the electricity. So I'm being honest with you, okay? But governments shouldn't run like enraged family members, because then you're going to make a lot of vicious decisions that affect tons of innocent lives. So we've condemned Hamas's brutal acts inside Israel very forcefully throughout here on this show, including the killing of children and babies. So now 500 Palestinian children are dead. How much bloodletting is enough? So if you're saying vengeance justifies the killing of these Palestinians, including their children, okay, I guess you could debate that. But I would come out on the side of don't do that. Why did we all get enraged at Hamas? Why were we so angry at them? Because their actions led to these, and directly, they killed these innocent civilians. So if Israel says yeah, we're going to cut off electricity knowing that it's going to kill all these people. We're leveling these blocks. We're giving some warnings, and some folks are saying, well, you cut off all the power, nobody's hearing the warnings. Again, you could debate the facts around that, but Israel's making a decision. Yes, we are going to punish not just Hamas, and they are going to, every Hamas member that crossed over into Israel is the most fair game you've ever seen in your life. Those are at best case scenario, if you don't want to call them terrorists or you want to call them soldiers, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if soldiers invade your area or terrorists invade your area, you get to kill them all, okay? So that is not in dispute at all. They're targeting some Hamas leaders. Of course, they're going to target Hamas leaders, perfectly reasonable and within normal actions within a war. The question is, where do you draw the line? So Hamas lost any kind of, Hamas never had any moral high ground, but on behalf of Palestinians, they lost the moral high ground, and it was despicable the way they did it. So now apparently Netanyahu's government says, oh yeah, I'm gonna lose the moral high ground just as much as you, or more than you, or less than you. You could debate what the relative actions are, and Hamas started it, no one debates that. Killing all those people isn't gonna help. Here, I'm gonna give you a quote that to me struck me the most. So this is from Associated Press News, but they're quoting the Red Cross here, as you'll see. Without electricity, hospitals risk turning into morgues, said Fabrizio Carboni, regional director of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Newborn incubators, kidney dialysis machines, x-rays, and more are all dependent on power, he said. No, the government cannot do that. You can't do that. And so they're gonna do it. And you say, oh, well, then Hamas should give over the case. Yes, but Hamas, you all say are terrorists, right? And what they did was terrorism when they killed those civilians, no question, right? So we're gonna leave the decision in the hands of terrorists, or are we going to be better than them? And I would ask Israel to be better than them. And you can say, oh, I can't believe you're even having this discussion. No, I am having this discussion. I am having it because do not counter with equal or more viciousness. Maybe you think morally speaking, you have a right to, but I'm asking you not to, because when you kill their children, this isn't going to solve the situation at all.
Yeah, I agree on that 100%. I have no problem with them targeting Hamas. I do believe that Hamas is a terrorist organization. I do believe that what they committed over the weekend in terms of their torture and murder and maiming of Israeli citizens and innocent civilians in Israel was absolutely disgusting, and they should suffer the consequences of that. But we're talking about a population of people in Gaza, half of whom are under the age of 18. These are not individuals who asked for this. These are not individuals who carried out terrorist attacks themselves. These are innocent civilians who are trying to live their lives in an untenable situation. And I want to go to the video showing scenes of what Gazans are dealing with right now as we speak. It is just absolutely tragic. It's difficult to watch, so I want to give that warning. But here is what it is like to be a Palestinian stuck in the Gaza Strip.
The Gaza City neighborhood, once known as El Rimel, the Sands, reduced to ashes. Its residents retrieve what they can, which isn't much. Israel continues to pound the strip, targeting, it says, Hamas infrastructure. Residents in shock are asking why. I got married this year, says Yahya Lahwel. What did I do? What have we done? You destroyed an entire neighborhood. He says he never fired a rocket. In this one of the most densely populated patches of land on Earth, bombs crashing into crowded neighborhoods rarely differentiate between fighter and civilian. The death toll rises by the hour. While Gaza's hospitals are overwhelmed with the wounded, around 40% of the population of Gaza is under the age of 15, according to the CIA. The information ministry in Gaza reports that nearly 170 buildings have been destroyed and more than 12,000 residences damaged.
And I think that Hamas's unwillingness to release the hostages not only shows their brutality toward Israeli civilians, but also their brutality toward Palestinians. knowing full well that this is going to continue happening and people will continue to be killed, brutalized as a result of their actions, but they don't care.
Yeah, so this is among the reasons why I said that Hamas was monstrous idiots. They have no plan, they have no end game, they have no strategy. It was just rage and murder and mayhem. And I said days ago that, and what's it gonna happen? You killed Israeli civilians in a grotesque way, and now they're gonna kill tons and tons and tons of Palestinians. So did you think that that wasn't going to happen? So what was your plan now? So Israel says they took out a bunch of the leadership, including one elite force for Hamas, if such a thing exists, and maybe a naval commander. Like, I suppose you expected, but didn't you not expect that they would level Gaza? Of course they're gonna level Gaza. So now you could say, hey, Cenk, it's not, of course they shouldn't. I just told you they shouldn't, right? But they're going to, and every rational person knew they were going to. So, look, guys, it's super easy to blame Hamas, and we just did it 10,000 times over. And yes, they started this, and all that responsibility is on them. But that doesn't mean that Israel doesn't have any responsibility. And you just saw that rubble there. Yes, they didn't start it, but just saying, okay, you started it, so now we're gonna kill however many more of you. That's not what a government should do. I know a lot of governments do it. Our government did a lot of that on 9/11, and we killed the wrong people in Iraq, let alone the right people, let alone civilians instead of soldiers. I understand that, but we spoke out against that. We speak out against Hamas, and now we're in a situation where we're gonna have to speak out against this brutality. And by the way, let's just acknowledge things that are super obvious. Look at why can Israel do this to Gaza with no repercussions, no brakes in the car, no nothing. Because of the occupation. The idea that Israel handed over Gaza Strip is absurd. I'm sorry, but I can't stomach that. It's not a thing that actually happened. People have to stop saying it. They don't control their borders at all. Then Netanyahu comes in and says, well, if you don't like it, you should leave. Great, yes, they would like to leave. 15% have packed up their bags and they're going stuffed into UN facilities within Gaza. But they can't leave. They don't control their own borders. They can't go into Israel. They can't go into Egypt. There is no leaving. And then, okay, well then how are they just cutting off the electricity? Well, so the Palestinians don't control their own electricity. They don't control their own fuel, their medicine, etc. You know why? Because they're occupied. There is an occupying force that controls them completely. Please don't deny reality. That's the reality, and that's why you're seeing total unlimited damage in Gaza. You saw it with your own eyes.
But let me ask you a question, Cenk, because prior to what Hamas did over the weekend, I would have agreed with you 1,000%. However, you have to understand the perspective of Israelis when Hamas has control of the Gaza Strip, knowing full well how brutal and savage they are and how willing they are to kill literal children, literal civilians who did nothing wrong. And people try to argue, no, they're not civilians. Some of these people are settlers, and so they're part of the problem. Anyone making that argument is so incredibly ignorant and hateful. Don't even bring that BS to me, okay? But when you see the kind of threat that Hamas poses to the civilian population in Israel, you can understand that perspective of fear.
Oh, of course I understand the fear.
So like, what is the solution? Because I understand where they're coming from, but I also don't want Palestinians to be brutalized like this.
Yeah, I know what the solution is. Ben and I talked about it on the first day here. And so look, you can say it's not easy, but I actually think it is easy. And I know that sounds outrageous, but I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, so first though, I have to distinguish a couple of things. So everyone is human. I wish no one would ever get killed in a situation like this, including the soldiers. A lot of the soldiers for the Israelis are young kids, pulled out of their house, get drafted, you gotta go, okay? A lot of the people dying in Gaza Strip are kids. And by the way, if they're 17, 18, they're part of the fighting, well, hey, you attacked Israel, you had it coming, but they're still 17, 18. Settlers, I think what the settlers are doing inside the Gaza Strip and the West Bank is disgusting. So
my understanding is they pulled settlers out of the Gaza Strip forcibly, okay?
Yeah, good.
And that there are settlers, yes, that is a huge problem when it comes to the West Bank. That is a problem with the West Bank.
Yeah.
But the settler argument in the context of the Gaza conflict makes absolutely no sense.
Okay, so look, what I was getting to is, it doesn't mean you get to kill settlers. They're still human beings, okay? Now, not that being said, also a different fact is, today there's a story about how the settlers, they killed 3 Palestinians. And then when the Palestinian families went to the funerals, the settlers pulled over the funeral procession and killed the people going to the funerals. So there's no end to this. There's no end to the hatred. And so is Hamas vicious? Of course. Look, again, everybody get upset if you want, but fundamentalism drives this. Normal people that grew up in a normal secular culture don't go around killing babies. You have to brainwash them into not regular religion, fundamentalist religion, and tell them that God wants you to murder babies. That's the only way that it happens. So yes, Hamas is out of control in that it is led by fundamentalists. The settlers, totally out of control, led by fundamentalists. And if you're getting like, oh no, but the settlers are just stealing land and murdering Palestinians, it's not that big a deal. You're wrong, it's a giant deal. It's a cancer that's causing this problem in the first place. So, okay, now we've apportioned gigantic blame to everyone who deserves the blame. So how the hell do we solve it? Oh, one last piece of blame. Stop saying, I will not accept this argument under any circumstances. The Palestinians had it coming. There is no Palestinians. Not every Palestinian, a 3-year-old didn't sign up to be part of Hamas. Because if you use that logic, just please think about it for 1 second. If you use that logic and go, oh yeah, but they voted for Hamas. Israel voted for Netanyahu. Under that logic, Hamas goes, oh, the Israelis had it coming. The civilians should be murdered for voting for Netanyahu. That is terrible logic. I hate that logic. All that logic leads to, and it's not even logic, all that leads to is killing more innocent civilians. All right, so what's the solution? And as I said on Monday, withdraw from the occupied territories, build the largest walls humans have ever built, make the Great Wall in China look like child's play. And then if at that point, Hamas, Fatah, any Palestinian government, you cross over to Israel, then you have attacked a foreign country, and they have every right to attack you back in whichever way that they like. But right now, the Palestinians don't have a country. They're completely and utterly vulnerable, defenseless, imprisoned, with no rights, no control over their own territory. So I would reverse the question. I have an answer, 1967 borders and giant walls. I have an answer. By the way, about a decade ago or longer, they negotiated a compromise that was past the 1967 borders. The Palestinians looked like that they were ready to accept that. And Hamas even indicated behind the scenes that they would withdraw that dumb, stupid thing that they have in their charter about how Israel's not allowed to exist. Really, Hamas, how's that working out for you? Anyways, so whether you think it's the Palestinians or the Israelis' fault for not accepting that peace agreement that was nearly done exists. They could put that into effect today. If I was Israel, I would not be unfair. Now I'm not talking about the war, in terms of the peace. I would take a peace deal that was slightly in favor of the Palestinians and then just do it unilaterally. By the way, the Palestinians don't want that. They say, oh, no, we need to have negotiations. How's your negotiations working out? Do it unilaterally, but be super fair. Then you sit on the moral high ground forever and ever and ever, okay? But now with the occupation and now what you're doing to Gaza, there goes the moral high ground. You had it, and then at a moment where you're wrecked with grief, if you can rise above that, that is when you become historic, and that is when the world cherishes you. But that is not what's, and I get it. Its human reaction is, you killed mine, I can't wait to kill yours. I understand that, but I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if finally one side rose above it? And right now they're not. And so I will condemn Hamas from here to eternity for what they did. But it makes the occupation no better at all. It's still the core of the problem. You cannot occupy people for 56 years, control their lives 100%, and then go, golly gee, hey, is it a problem? Yes, it's a problem. And if you say, no, you're not allowed to talk about it the day after, okay, I hear you, I said it. Like, hey, this is not time to talk about apartheid, et cetera, the day after. But when do we get to talk about it? Do we have to wait 2 years? This is the same thing that happened at MSNBC with me. I was gonna criticize Obama. They said, don't do it, you have to wait a week. Until it's out of the news cycle. And the occupation continues on mercilessly to the end of time. It's incumbent upon Israel to come up with a plan to end the occupation. If you're the occupying force, it is your moral duty to end the occupation. If you do not, then you lose the moral high ground and you don't get okay, everyone here is bad guys, but go ahead, keep killing each other. See how it turns out for you. I'm disgusted by those poor kids dead in Israel. A baby stroller by a car, they mowed it down, families killed in the kibbutz. I mean, God knows what they did to women, et cetera. And I'm disgusted by the 500 Palestinian children that are dead now and way more to come. And when a government like Israel says, we will cut off all of your fuel, and if you got kids on incubators and you got grandmothers on life support, they're all gonna die and we don't care. That's not what a decent government is supposed to do.
When we come back from the break, Donald Trump has some criticism for Benjamin Netanyahu, and apparently there is an ongoing feud between both sides. That and more coming up.
All right, so obviously a lot of raw emotions here on our part, on the part of the entire world, and including the members and the viewers here. So I'm not even gonna read some of the ones that are more over the top, but I will read these and then respond. Huang Jun in our member section says, there are no good sides here. It's bad versus evil, and innocent people are caught in the middle. As a very wise man once said, be ruthless to systems and be kind to individuals. Well, I couldn't agree more with that. And that man was legendary. And yes, both the Israeli and Palestinian civilians are caught by two different right-wing sides who think they gain from violence and death. Teddy Cool says, I doubt Hamas will free the hostages. They don't care about the innocent civilians, civilian Palestinians dying. Well, that's very true. If they cared about innocent Palestinian civilians dying, they would not have done what they did, because that was definitely to come. Trista writes in, it's a ruse, Cenk. The enemy has strategically operated their military operations to appear as civilian infrastructure. Trista, they don't have an organized military. There is no military basis. Israel does not allow it. So if they put it under a school, a hospital, et cetera, then they're the worst people on earth. And by the way, people always say that. I honestly have never seen evidence of that. There's a lot of loose talk about that, okay? But if you say, well, they're generally in a civilian infrastructure, there's literally nothing else in Gaza. But she continues, until 1 month ago, Qatar was supplying $30 million a month to Hamas, which is the ruling government in Gaza. If they gave a damn about food, energy, water, et cetera, they would have invested in the Gaza people. If you want to blame the other Arab countries for not investing in the Palestinians or fighting for them, of course. But that doesn't mean the Palestinians should get brutalized. Hamas is Gaza, Gaza is Hamas. Don't do that, Trista. Because then you could say Netanyahu is Israel, Israel's Netanyahu. Don't do that. They don't give a damn about the Palestinians, that's true. Hamas wants them to be collateral damage so the media can, again, sanitize their brutality and barbarism. Well, don't feed into it on both sides.
I gotta jump in on that comment. I would hate for the international community to look at the civilians of the United States and assume that every single one of us is a Trump supporter that believes in overthrowing our democratic process. Sometimes the government, actually oftentimes the government, is not representative of its people. So in the case of Hamas and Palestinians, I do not in any way believe that Hamas is representative of the Palestinian people. I think that's unfair to Palestinians. And I want you to think about this in the context of your life, who you are, what you represent, and whether or not you want whatever given administration is in power at any given time, if that person or that administration really represents who you are as a person. Just think about that.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Questing for the Quest, Stephen GG, and brother, I'm gonna have trouble with your first name as you would probably with mine, Cuauhtemoc Martinez. Thank you guys, we appreciate all of you guys. You empower us and allow us to do our job. They hit the join button below the video on YouTube. You can do likewise, or tyt.com/join. Anna.
Well, we have some more Israel-related news, although there is an American angle to it because Trump decided to weigh in on Benjamin Netanyahu. So let's get to that.
I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing, I will say that.
Former President Donald Trump expressed disappointment toward the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his speech in West Palm Beach, Florida this week. Now, before we get to why he feels this way, I think it's pretty important to understand more of the context of this discussion and how Trump thinks the world is actually a safer place when he is in charge. Let's watch.
We killed the founder of the ISIS movement, al-Baghdadi. Remember al-Baghdadi, the biggest of them all? And then we terminated the world's top terrorist, the Iranian butcher. I was also proud to be the best friend Israel has ever had in the White House by far. And if the election wasn't rigged, there would be nobody even thinking about going into Israel. The election was rigged, very sadly rigged.
So in that clip, he mentioned taking out one of Iran's generals, and what he's referring to was the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, who was again assassinated during Trump's administration. Luckily, that did not spark a hot war between the United States and Iran. There was a lot of concern that it would. And so he took a major risk by doing that. And so understand that context as he weighs in on why he believes Benjamin Netanyahu is so disappointing.
I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing, I will say that. And so when I see sometimes the intelligence, you talk about the intelligence, or you talk about some of the things that went wrong over the last week, they've got to straighten it out because they're fighting potentially a very big force. They're fighting potentially Iran. And when they have people saying the wrong things, everything they say is being digested by these people because they're vicious and they're smart. And boy, are they vicious, because nobody's ever seen the kind of sight that we've seen. Nobody's ever seen it. But they cannot play games. So we were disappointed by that, very disappointed, but we did the job ourselves, and it was absolute precision, magnificent, beautiful job.
Now, something to also keep in mind as we continue giving you details on this story is that Donald Trump was absolutely furious and beside himself after Benjamin Netanyahu accepted the results of the 2020 presidential election and accepted that President Joe Biden was in fact the victor in that general election. Now, Israeli officials have responded to Trump. They didn't take kindly to what he had to say. To be clear, I'm no fan of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a far-right extremist and who has carried out all sorts of terrible acts against the Palestinian people and has sparked a judicial crisis in his country, spurring endless protests among the people of Israel over the last year. But my reasons for being against Netanyahu, very different from Donald Trump's reasons. His reasons really have to do more about the fact that He doesn't like that Netanyahu is unwilling to just be his lapdog and declare that he won the 2020 presidential election. So before we get to the Israeli officials and their response to Trump, Cenk, what are your thoughts?
I loathe Donald Trump, and I can't understand. I'm trying to be open-minded to people who don't agree with me, but how do you not loathe the guy? So why is he attacking Netanyahu? There's a million legitimate reasons. The Netanyahu is callous, giant right winger, corrupt, etc. No, none of those reasons. None of those reasons, right? No, he's saying, well, we killed Soleimani, and then he tried to take my credit. How do you not see how self-obsessed he is? What a little bitch he is. Oh, it's me. Netanyahu tried to take away my credit. Look, as much as I despise Netanyahu, his people were just murdered, massacred. This is not the time to worry about your petty little bitch ass.
That's all he cares about.
That's all he cares about. And then why is the other reason he hates Netanyahu? He wouldn't acknowledge that my election was stolen. Come on, right wingers, man. I've never seen a weaker man in my life. What a pathetic, pathetic human being. They took my toy away. The government was my toy. Oh, they took it away from me. I'm gonna smash it. And if anybody says anything mean about me, I'm gonna say something 10 times more mean about them. What a little pathetic bitch. Come on, man. MAGA, how do you not see that? How are you worshiping a guy who's the weakest man in America? Everything is, oh, I was offended by Netanyahu. Jesus Christ, man. Try to become a man for the first time in your life. Total loser, pathetic, self-obsessed narcissist. How do you not see it? How do you not see it?
All right.
Jesus Christ, that guy's winning.
All right, let's get to what Israeli officials have said in response. So Shlomo Kari, who is a member of the Knesset in the Likud party and serving as Israel's Minister of Communications, reportedly told Israel's Channel 13 that it is, quote, shameful that a man like that, a former United States president, abets propaganda and disseminates things that wound the spirit of Israel's fighters and its citizens, end quote. And then he said, we don't have to bother with him and the nonsense he spouts, at least for now. And hopefully,
well, you might have to bother with him soon. And he doesn't care that your civilians were massacred. He doesn't care at all. He cares that his fifis were hurt. Oh, wow, your feelings. That seems super important, Donald Trump, you monster.
And this final statement is, in my opinion, the most interesting, because when asked if Trump's remarks make it clear that he cannot be relied on, Karhi reportedly replied, according to the Times of Israel, obviously.
That's obvious to everyone on the planet except MAGA. Literally everyone on planet Earth knows that Trump is a giant liar, that he lies about everything. MAGA's like, nope, he's the only one telling the truth. Okay, congrats. You figured it out. You guys were the one set of geniuses that figured it out, that little baby that's crying in the corner 24/7 about how his feelings were hurt and how he lies through his teeth a billion times, has never shown any evidence for anything he has ever said. But yeah, he's the one guy telling the truth. You guys nailed it.
Now, both Governor Ron DeSantis, who of course is running against Donald Trump in the Republican primary, has criticized him, as has current President Joe Biden. In addition to his statements about Netanyahu, Trump went after the defense minister of Israel as well, seemingly referring to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Trump said they have a national defense minister or somebody saying, I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack us from the north. So the following morning they attacked. If you listen to this jerk, you would attack from the north because he said that's our weak spot. Trump remarked that Hezbollah was very smart for following every word put out by American and Israeli officials. Now, obviously that did not sit well with Israeli officials. And so when Fox News reached out to Donald Trump for a clarification or a comment about that, a Trump campaign spokesperson clarified that President Trump was clearly pointing out how incompetent Biden and his administration were by telegraphing to the terrorists an area that is susceptible to an attack. That is not what he said. And also, show me where the Biden administration pointed to vulnerabilities so Hezbollah can attack.
Biden gave a speech that Israel absolutely loved. 48% of the country watched it live. And even people who were Biden's critics inside Israel said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, look, by the way, there could be critique of Biden saying that he did not seem to put any brakes in the Israeli car as they were rolling into Gaza and doing the things that they're doing. But to suggest that Biden was not pro-Israel enough, you'd have to be a lunatic to believe that. But of course they're not, they're just liars. All they do is lie.
Yes, they do lie because in additional reporting, 2 people close to Trump have spoken to the press to say that in phone calls with various pro-Israel GOP allies and donors who want to know if how Trump would handle the war between Israel and Palestine. 2 sources familiar with the matter told Rolling Stone that Trump actually wants Benjamin Netanyahu impeached, even though their parliamentary system doesn't work the same way as the United States, and impeachment is not possible the way it is here in the United States. Trump has relayed a few ideas he has discussed with policy advisors, including cutting off all aid to Palestinians and encouraging other nations to do the same, as well as capturing and extraditing certain Hamas figures. But during these private conversations, Trump has also spent an inordinate amount of time aggressively trashing Netanyahu. In a recurring comment Trump has yet to publicly state, he has expressed his strong desire for Netanyahu to be gone by the time Trump would potentially be back in the White House in 2025, according to these sources. Since Hamas attacked Israel on Saturday, Trump has said Netanyahu should be impeached by the Israeli parliament because the assault, which was preceded by an apparently catastrophic intelligence failure on the part of Netanyahu's government, occurred on his watch. Now, if it is true that he said that, that is probably the one thing in this entire story he said that is actually accurate, because Egyptian officials put out statements indicating that they had warned the Israeli government that Hamas was planning an attack, that they were planning something terrible, but that Netanyahu and his allies refused to listen, that they expressed indifference to that intelligence. And if you look at some of the polling in Israel right now, you'll notice that Benjamin Netanyahu is suffering from a low approval rating. Many Israelis appear to blame Netanyahu's government for the surprise attack. In a recent poll by Israel's Dialogue Center, a whopping 86% of Israelis surveyed characterized the assault as a failure of leadership by the Netanyahu government.
Thank you. So is he right that Netanyahu did not react? Forget the reaction, that he did not act in time. He's too busy worrying about his own corruption and worrying about destroying Israel's democracy and court system, etc., that he didn't bother doing intelligence. He didn't bother, and then his people got killed. He's right about it. By the way, thank you, Israeli citizens, for not only being honest but smart. Like, look, I love the American people. I know that we had a rage-filled, emotion-filled reaction to 9/11, which is very understandable. But I don't know why we did hero worship of the clowns that let it happen. So Rudy Giuliani puts the Terrorism Response Center in the one place that terrorists had hit before, World Trade Center. They had hit it in '93. The idiot put it back in there. Because the firemen couldn't communicate with one another effectively, they walked into a collapsing building. So many more people died. Bush got a memo that said they're determined to attack inside the United States. He's too busy on a month-long vacation on his ranch, and he didn't do anything. And what happened? What did America do? We shot both of them up to like 90% approval rating. Whereas now the Israeli people are like, no, that moron in charge totally dropped the bag, dropped the ball, and didn't pay attention and got us killed. Correct, that is correct. Thank you, Israeli citizens. Okay, so that's the only thing that Donald Trump is slightly right about, and we're always fair, okay? Now, let's talk about the things he's wrong about. Netanyahu should be impeached. There's no impeachment in Israel. So you're the former president of the United States. You were in charge of our foreign policy. Have you ever looked up anything, a single fact in your life? Do you know anything about politics? Do you know anything about government? Do you know anything about anything? Not a single thought in his head. And he doesn't think like, hey, I wonder if a prime minister could be impeached. I'd wonder, right? Wouldn't you wonder like, hey, that's a different system than ours. Do they have impeachment? No, nope. They should impeach him. They should impeach him. Okay, so look guys, what do you want me to tell you, MAGA? What do you want me to tell you? The guy did a dementia test and thought it was an IQ test. Really? Really? You're not sure if he's bright? One of the dumbest guys in the world. Okay, have at it. Enjoy him. So, all right.
All right, we got to take a break. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got some big updates on Bob Menendez, the senator who is being accused of a terrible corruption scheme. He's facing additional charges. That and more coming up.
Back on a social break here. As I said, get ready. People have strong opinions on both sides. I'm gonna read them. Let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Dorothy Zink, Mocha Funk, and Chaz Mina. Thank you guys. We appreciate your contributions. You guys, as I always say, make the show possible. Nick Clark wrote in, even if Hamas operates from the basements of hospitals and schools, Israel has goddamn special forces to use instead of leveling whole city blocks. I agree with that, but then by the way, when the special forces go in, you can't complain about the special forces. But yes, I think special forces are way better than just dropping bombs on top of buildings. Kent Carlotto wrote in, thanks, hey, can I go back to that actually? Nick, look, we had this debate that became a tiny bit, it was a thing that the internet had a tiny bit of brouhaha over. It was a debate about Israel. It was a long time ago, and it was Steve-O and Dave Rubin were the main guys who were going back and forth. There were other people involved. And Steve asked Dave, would you bomb elementary school if you thought Hamas was underneath it? And he said, and kill all the kids inside. And he said yes. I would say no. I would hope that everybody would say no. So as much as it's terrible, send in special forces, go get those sons of bitches, but do not bomb the school. Don't do it. But no one listens. Kent Carlotto said, thanks Anna for the reminder of how empathy works. I don't mind admitting I needed it. ARX says, Americans foam at the mouth over the gas price rising 10 cents. Imagine if someone else controlled our gas, food, and electricity. Yep. I thought you were gonna go in the other direction and say, imagine if we got hit like Israel got hit. That's a good point too. But my God, if some other government controlled everything about our lives, what do you think Americans would do? What do you think Texans would do? What do you think the right wing in America would do? You can lie all you want about it, but you know what they do. They wouldn't have any talk of terrorism. You know that with absolute certainty. Brad David said, I called into Mark Levin's show and told him that Israel should not escalate things and kill any Palestinian civilians. He accused me of being an anti-Semite and hung up on me. So please don't kill civilians is now anti-Semitic according to the right wing, not according to everybody. Okay. Not surprising. Mark Levin is an idiot. So Anthony McClendon said, if the Israeli government that has brutally oppressed Palestinians, and it is Hamas who committed the atrocities of the past few days, but neither will suffer, the people, Palestinians and Israelis will pay the price, along the lines of what we've been saying. I think you're right. Charles Beasley says, the time to save lives is past. Of course we would like for all lives to be saved. The enemy is behind the innocent. None of the decisions are going to age well. It's naive to think social media outrage can save lives. But Charles, couldn't we say the same thing about Israelis? And I wouldn't say either one of these things. But they would say the enemy of the Israeli government is hiding behind their civilians in Israel. So we couldn't get to the Knesset. We couldn't get to Netanyahu's mansion, so instead we did this. That's a terrible argument. It's a terrible argument when Hamas uses it, and it's a terrible argument when Israel uses it. Sorry, brother, but that's my real opinions. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Randy Cotto. Randy, thanks for signing up. We appreciate you. Anna.
Well, we have one more story having to do with the war in Israel and Gaza, but this has more to do with the disinformation that's been spreading. European Union officials are threatening to ban X, formerly known as Twitter, if Elon Musk fails to do something about what they consider disinformation about the Israel-Gaza war. In a statement to Insider, member of European Parliament, Stephanie Jan Corin, made this following statement. These are not empty threats. The EU commissioner gave Musk a deadline of 7 p.m. Central European time on Wednesday, that was yesterday, to comply with European Union regulations. And he has responded. Now, should Musk fail to do something about what they deem disinformation, the social media platform could be sanctioned and even banned, she said. She also argued that Elon Musk must understand that with his platform having more than 350 million users comes higher responsibilities. There cannot be any illegal content or disinformation circulating within Europe anymore. In addition, in a letter signed by Thierry Breton, the European Commissioner for the Internal Market, the EU said on Tuesday that the Commission had indications the platform was being used to disseminate illegal content and disinformation in the EU over Hamas's attacks against Israel. Now, I do want to get to Elon Musk's response to it in just a moment, but I have to say it is incredibly difficult to moderate disinformation on social media platforms. Who is the arbiter of that disinformation? Who makes the decisions? Twitter has community notes, which I think have been helpful. I will admit that. I have noticed that some of the claims that were inaccurate have been corrected. However, some of those claims get repeated without community notes included, and that's a problem. Elon Musk responded by saying, our policy is that everything is open source and transparent, an approach that I know the EU supports. Please list the violations you allude to on X so that the public can see them. Merci beaucoup. And he responded, Breton's responded to Musk by saying that the billionaire was well aware of warnings from users and authorities about fake content and glorification of violence. Now, Hamas has been banned from using the platform. However, there are individuals who might not be part of Hamas, but they are using videos that are put out by this group on the social media platform, and they are not that content is not being taken down. So that's part of the complaint here. Some media organizations also did their own review of what's been transpiring in regard to the messaging and the content on the war in Israel and Palestine. Over the weekend, X flagged several posts as misleading or false, including a video purportedly showing Israeli airstrikes against Hamas in Gaza. Thousands of users saw the post, and the most widely shared posts were flagged as misleading by the platform. Still, dozens of posts with the same video and caption were not flagged by X's system, according to CNBC's review. And look, there has been a lot of misinformation and disinformation shared on the platform. I think we've all kind of come across it. And just as a warning to you all, it's a warning that I take seriously myself. You can't just believe everything you see on any social media platform. You have to find a way to corroborate it, find an actual credible source to confirm it. And I know that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, but if you're unable to do that, I think it's safer to avoid taking those posts as truth.
Yeah, so Elon Musk sometimes does things that are just so silly. Oh, why don't you show us the videos, huh? Well, because they just told you that they're overly violent and fake. So why would the people who want you to take those videos down take them and then show them? You think they're children? That they're gonna fall for that ha-ha trick? That's absurd. Okay, so now look, when it comes to Twitter, I can't call it X, it's so silly. Anyway, is it difficult to monitor all of the fake videos on an enormous platform like that? Yes, it is, no question. We consider doing a platform, and one day we will at TYT, and I know the mechanics of running one because of that, and it is very difficult, okay? Now, having said that, here's where size matters. So these rules do not apply in Europe unless you have 45 million daily users. That is a giant number. Now, Twitter has 350 million, so they're way larger than even where the regulations would apply. That is when you hire a lot of people, because you're making a lot of money, to do that difficult task of moderating. But Elon fired all the moderators, or a lot of the moderators, and he fired like 3/4 of his staff. That's why the platform is overrun with fake videos, gory videos. By the way, by all accounts, I haven't seen it. I'm not saying that just to say, oh, not me. I'm not looking for it. Anyways, people say that Twitter is totally overrun with porn, right? So that's not supposed to be the case either. But that's what happens when you fire 3/4 of your employees. So he's got to figure this thing out. You're either going to have a platform that's moderated, or you're not going to have a platform in Europe and in a lot of other places. Look, America is totally lawless. You can buy the American government anytime you want, and you can pass any laws. You can be completely unregulated. But the rest of the developed world has laws and rules and regulations you have to abide by.
That's true. The other thing that makes this a far more complicated story, though, is we're talking about a global social media platform. And so the idea that the anti-free speech regulations that may exist in one country impacting what we see here in the United States is a little concerning.
Well, no, and so that's difficult for sure, because now you got to comply with 200 different sets of laws. But remember, these things don't apply to you unless you're already relatively gigantic, okay? And now if they apply to things that are not gigantic, then I disagree with them. Because that kind of overregulation kills off small businesses and leads to monopolies for businesses that are already large. So it's a balancing act. You have to be, you have to use good judgment here. But for the giant businesses, no, they all have a choice to make. So when, for example, if Iran says, okay, if you have any kind of freedom on X or Twitter or whatever, or you don't do Iranian propaganda, I'm not going to allow you in Iran. You guys just got to say, okay, then you're not allowing me in Iran, and I'm moving.
And Musk did bend to the will of the Chinese government for business reasons.
100%. So look at the decision that Elon Musk is making, and this is just a fact. He's willing to say to the Chinese, which is not a democracy in any way, shape, or form, run by now essentially one guy. You can call it a politburo, you can call it a dictatorship, you can call it whatever you like, okay? But he says to them, well, your market is large enough, so I'll do whatever your government tells me to do. Oh, Europe, you're not quite as large and you believe in freedom and democracy, so I'm not going to listen to you. Okay, well, now, look, Europe ain't nothing to mess with. When they say there's a regulation, it's not like America where you could just bribe all the government officials, okay? They'll apply that regulation and they'll cut off Twitter, and then we'll see what happens then.
Well, let's get back to the United States and the dysfunctional nature of our Congress, because of course we've got lots of clowns in the clown car, and Senator Bob Menendez happens to be one of them. Big update on that story. Let's do it. Democratic Senator Bob Menendez has been charged by federal prosecutors for acting as a foreign agent of Egypt. Now, news of his alleged corruption scandal broke 2 weeks ago, and he has resisted calls to resign, even though dozens of members from his own party have called on him to do so. However, let's get to the superseding indictment here. The superseding indictment filed in Manhattan federal court accuses Menendez of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires people to register with the United States government if they are acting as an agent of a foreign principal. As a member of Congress, Menendez was prohibited from even being an agent of a foreign government, even if he did register as one. as a lawmaker, you're not supposed to be in cahoots with foreign leaders or foreign business people. The indictment says the conspiracy occurred from January of 2018 through June of 2022. It alleges that in May of 2019, Menendez, his wife, and a business associate named Wael Hana met an Egyptian intelligence official in Menendez's Senate office in Washington, D.C. During that meeting, they allegedly discussed a US citizen who was seriously injured in a 2015 airstrike by the Egyptian military using a US-made Apache helicopter, the indictment says. Some members of Congress objected to awarding certain military aid to Egypt over that episode, and the perception that the Egyptian government was not willing to fairly compensate the injured American, according to the indictment. Now, here's where Bob Menendez comes in. Apparently, shortly after that meeting he had in Washington, the Egyptian official texted Hana that if Menendez helped resolve the matter, he will sit very comfortably. Hana, the indictment said, replied, "Orders, consider it done." And remember, Menendez's home was raided. During that raid, investigators found bars of gold. They found a ton of cash, lots of questionable potential evidence that could help the prosecutors in this indictment. I mean, he's so incredibly corrupt, and this is a separate corruption investigation. It's separate from the one he faced back in 2015. So he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar before. He got super lucky in that there was a hung jury and prosecutors dropped the charges. Let's see what happens this time around.
So I want to read you one more thing from The Guardian before I light into Menendez. The indictment said that while Menendez was chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, he took several steps to secretly aid Egyptian officials. They included ghostwriting a letter to fellow senators encouraging them to lift a hold on $300 million in aid. He was also accused of passing along information about employees at the US Embassy in Egypt. That is disastrous. And transmitting non-public information to Egyptian officials about military aid. Yeah, so in other words, he got the gold, he got the cash, and then he did what he was asked to do for Egypt.
How is this not treason?
Look.
Let's just keep it real. How is this not treason?
So look, when there's discussions, allegations, rumors, whatever you want to call it, about Jared Kushner giving over our allies within Saudi Arabia, and then MBS maybe Mohammed bin Salman maybe killing them, and he's certainly imprisoning them, etc. I don't know that that's true, and there should definitely be an investigation of it. And then Jared Kushner got $2 billion from Mohammed bin Salman right after the elections. Someone should definitely look into that. And so that is a different level because people got killed. But this is right below that. So nobody got killed here, but he's telling them who works at our embassy in Egypt. Are you insane? So whether you call, I don't know that the reason I gave that example of Kushner is that I don't know that it rises to the level of treason based on those kind of metrics, right? It was American national security betrayed, etc. But it's a good question. It's a fair question, right? And definitely a foreign agent. Now look, they had to prove all this in court, but there is no deep state. That's a right-wing like conspiracy theory. And the deep state isn't like, okay, let's get Trump because we're all Democrats, but let's randomly pick on that one Democrat. No, he did it. Let's put it this way. He's very, very likely did it, okay? So now, what should happen to Menendez? Open and shut, where's the conversation? They should drive him the hell out of the Congress. Maybe, metaphorically, tar and feather. I mean, they should get together in the Senate, and both Republicans and Democrats should chant shame, shame, shame until Bozo the clown leaves the goddamn building. Okay, he's going, no, I'm not leaving. So what? You know why? Because he's power hungry. He knows if he steps down, he has no power base left, and then he's gonna have to deal with the Justice Department, and he's probably gonna go to jail. So he's desperately clinging on to power. So you have to force him out of power. So there is one hero in this story, and it's John Fetterman. So Fetterman is a colleague of his. In the past, every Democrat's like, oh no, our colleagues are the most beloved, important things in the world, way more important than our voters, right? And Fetterman, we told you, populist, progressive, he's back. So he's like, no, He should definitely leave, and we should drive him out. He's like, where's the question? This is not even a close question. Drive him the hell out. He doesn't belong in the Senate. Thank you, Fetterman, for at least one senator. I'm Bernie too, but Fetterman's stronger and louder on this, saying, get the hell out of here, you corrupt pig. So this is what makes the American government a joke. When Republicans and Democrats do over the top corruption, ridiculous, insane corruption, but colleagues, we hate your colleagues. When is it gonna get through your thick head? That's why we don't like the establishment, because you defend this obviously corrupt guy. He got caught before too. They all knew he was a corrupt piece of crap. You think Schumer didn't know? You think the other Democrats didn't know? But colleague, their little club is so much more important than their voters or the rest of us. Drive him the hell out. Obvious.
All right, that does it for our first hour. When we come back, we have some updates on Fulton County, Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis's trial against Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. She is accusing one of Trump's allies of interfering with the prosecution and abusing his power. We'll tell you who she's talking about and more when we come back.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitsing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. Referred to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Dark Shurkens, and John Lamensha. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for joining. We appreciate you. TYT.com/join. Casper.
Well, we've got some updates on the Fulton County prosecutor, Fani Willis, and how fed up she is with certain members of Congress. So let's talk about it. Fulton County, Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis is accusing Republican Congressman Jim Jordan of abusing his authority by interfering with her prosecution of Donald Trump. Now, her prosecution, of course, has to do with the RICO charges that she has filed against him and his co-conspirators in their attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Now, Donald Trump, of course, has a pretty sizable group of lackeys in Congress. Jim Jordan happens to be one of them. And so in a fiery letter to Jordan, who serves as the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Willis pushed back against his request for information about her prosecution. She also accused him of attempting to block Biden's electoral victory in her state. Now, before we get to the details about Willis's letter to Jordan, the most recent one, we have to back up because they have been corresponding, if you will, for a few months now. And it's important to understand how it all started and how we ended up where we are today. So Jordan initially wrote to Willis back in August of this year, just hours before Trump appeared in county jail, essentially asking her to turn over all documents and communications related to the case. Let's just pause to really absorb how ridiculous that is, okay? A Trump lackey in Congress is demanding that the district attorney in Fulton County hand over all documents related to her prosecution of the guy that he is a lapdog for. Okay, obviously she's not gonna do that. That would be insane. Now, he wrote at the time, Congress in general, and this committee in particular, have a strong legislative interest in ensuring that popularly elected local prosecutors do not misuse their law enforcement authority to target federal officials for political reasons. We can only conclude from your hostile response to the committee's oversight that you are actively and aggressively engaged in such a scheme. Now, maybe there would be a little bit of credibility to that argument had there not been a fake slate of electors and memos having to do with the fake slate of electors, noting that the slate of electors are in fact fraudulent and fake. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of evidence that's already been presented publicly in regard to the crimes that Donald Trump and his co-conspirators allegedly engaged in. So arguing that this is political is ridiculous. On the other hand, though, the impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden without a shred of evidence indicating that he engaged in wrongdoing, that seems to be a little politically motivated, no? Cenk.
Yeah, so you know me, I always think shoe on the other foot. So what if some Yahoo prosecutor in Alabama wanted to go after Biden and was like, okay, I'm indicting him for, because I don't like his looks, okay? And the House was House controlled by the Democrats, et cetera. What do I think would be a legitimate thing to ask and not a legitimate thing to ask? hey, have you been coordinating with Trump's Department of Justice, for example? Okay, maybe it could be legitimate. Depends on the situation. I would let a judge rule on whether that's okay or not, right? Give me all of your evidence in the trial, not legitimate under any circumstance. You can't even say to the Yahoo in Alabama that's going after Trump or going after Biden for not being attractive enough. No, you don't get to take a prosecutor's evidence. And you guys, come on, even if you're Republican, you don't know that Jim Jordan's gonna hand it over to Trump the second that he gets it? Of course he is. Like, there's no, like, they don't believe in rules at all. Okay, so now, two important pieces of evidence that confirm that. So I'll go to graphic 4 here. This is from the Help. Indeed, you confess to this motivation, Fani Willis explains, on Mark Levin's show on September 10th, 2023, when discussing one of my office's active prosecutions. You boasted, we're trying to get all the answers, but we're trying to stop this stuff as well.
Oops.
Oopsie doopsie.
I love that he just publicly said it.
Because there's no bounds, there's no brakes in the car, there's no bottom to the barrel, there's no, it's a clown car with no brakes. So he's like, they're barreling. You remember, that road in San Francisco that takes all those turns and is super steep? That's what they're good. That's the Republican Party right now. They're like, yeah, we're cheating and we want to get all of our evidence so we can give it to stop all the prosecutions of Donald Trump and for the crimes he's committed. Did I say that out loud on air? Yeah, you did. You did.
So dumb. Like, the incompetence is really what gets me, right? The incompetence is incredible here. Anyway, so let's go back a little bit though. In response to that August letter that Jordan had sent to Fani Willis, Willis responded on September 7th, attacking his basic understanding of the law, its practice, and the ethical obligations of attorneys general and prosecutors specifically. She wrote, your attempt to invoke congressional authority to intrude upon and interfere with an active criminal case in Georgia is flagrantly at odds with the Constitution. There is absolutely no support for Congress purporting to second guess or somehow supervise an ongoing Georgia criminal investigation and prosecution. That violation of Georgia's sovereignty is offensive and will not stand. Willis told Jordan he was misinformed about the details of the indictment and encouraged him to buy a copy of RICO state by state in order to obtain a better understanding of the law. She also told Jordan that her response was merely voluntary since settled constitutional law clearly permits me to ignore your unjustified and illegal intrusion. Damn. I gotta say, Jordan's going after a heavyweight here, okay? Because she is not playing and she is coming out strong and swinging. She's not a typical Democrat at all.
Yeah, all of a sudden I'm a huge Fani Willis fan. Like, that's a killer right there, okay? Like, did you come for me? I think you made the mistake of coming for me, because now I'm gonna come for you, okay? I have not seen anyone on our side, meaning loosely the left, loosely Democrats, and she is elected, be that strong in a million years.
It is incredible.
Yeah, now, and by the way, was it that hard? No, she slapped him around, but with legalese, and she's 100% right on the facts. Why not come out aggressively? Why do Democrats always start in a crouched position like, So when I see new people like Fani Willis going, no, I'm gonna correct your ass. Yes, there you go. That's the kind of Democrat I like.
So let's get to the most recent letter and what Fani Willis had to say about that. So on Wednesday of this week, she said that Jordan has already shown his hand in terms of his desire to interfere with the case. That was when she had mentioned his appearance on Mark Levin's show. And she also said the following: a charitable explanation of your correspondence is that you are ignorant of the United States and Georgia constitutions and codes. A more troubling explanation is that you are abusing your authority as chairman of the Committee on the Judiciary to attempt to obstruct and interfere with a Georgia criminal prosecution. She also noted that even though there was no obligation to provide some of the information he was requesting, she decided to do so, some of the information. We have already written a letter, which I have attached again for your reference, explaining why the legal positions you advance are meritless. Nothing you've said in your latest letter changes that fact. And Changes, I'm sorry, what was that?
No, I'm just saying teach it, preach it.
Yeah, definitely. And then she also said that his letter comes as my team and I are exceptionally busy. So she's like, can you be gone? You're wasting my time. I'm very busy. And I believe her in that regard because she's got a lot on her plate with Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. As I have explained, your requests implicate significant, well-recognized confidentiality interests related to an ongoing criminal matter, as well as serious constitutional concerns regarding federalism and separation of power, something that Republicans love to pretend to care a lot about. But whenever it's convenient for them, they suddenly don't care about at all. And in regards to the information that she provided, Jordan is trying to make it appear as though there is something wrong with Fani Willis collaborating with special counsel Jack Smith, who is pursuing criminal charges against Donald Trump for election interference on a federal level. There is no reason to believe that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, if they're not collaborating at all, that might be problematic. But what Jordan wanted was information about any federal grants that her office might be receiving. And she actually provided information about that to Jordan. Clearly there was nothing wrong because he did nothing with that information. So he's trying to hit at her at any possible angle and he is failing miserably. I think he should take her recommendations seriously and maybe buy that book and understand what the laws actually are. But we'll see what happens moving forward. He's been failing so far in attempting to basically dismantle this case against Trump.
You know what's weird is that I've gone on at least a half a dozen right-wing podcasts or somewhere in the right-wing part of the spectrum in the last couple of weeks to promote the book. And we almost always have really reasonable discussions. So I don't know what's going on with Republican leaders and why they've lost their minds. And maybe I'm not going on the right shows in Looney World, but like there is no fact pattern where a member of Congress can say to a prosecutor, and it's local prosecutor, give me all of the evidence you're gonna use against my political ally. Or against anyone, it's not a thing. And they're not even just like, Republican leaders are not even trying to make sense. They're not trying to be in the fact-based world, objective reality, nothing. They're like, oh, okay, let's impeach Biden. Oh, what is it for? I mean, like the simplest question, what's it for? We don't like him. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. His son, we definitely don't like his son. Okay, but do you have any evidence? Okay, why don't you like his son? Do you have any evidence connecting him to his son? No, we just don't like him. Okay, all right, what am I gonna do with you? Am I gonna debate something versus nothing? So, okay, Willis, way to be, man. So this isn't just about just prosecuting Trump. I'm not saying, oh, go get him. And if you prosecute Trump on the wrong things, I will hate you forever.
Right.
Because you will lose credibility for everyone, okay? And I still think that guy in New York is super soft, the one trying him on his heart's not into it, man. He says, Alvin Bragg. He says, oh, I'm gonna prosecute him on the hush money, that's campaign finance violations, and then we haven't heard a single thing from him since then. But the rest of them now, Merrick Garland, terrible. But Jack Smith, good. Fani Willis, great. And Letitia James, pretty good. So hey, some actual strong people showed up to actually do their jobs. Thank you.
All right, let's try to fit in one more story before we take a quick break, because it is related to the Georgia prosecution and the co-conspirators who are having a tough time with their legal defense, at least funding it. So, defendants charged in the Georgia election interference case are now starting to get pretty creative in trying to fundraise to pay for their legal defense. These are the co-conspirators who, along with Donald Trump, are facing charges for their election interference or alleged election interference. This is the case brought forward by the Fulton County, Georgia prosecutor, Fani Willis. Now, nearly all of the 18 defendants in the case are counting on donations to help with their legal fees. And the case is likely going to take months, if not years, to fully resolve. And that includes, of course, the former president himself, Donald Trump. This image shows you who all of the co-conspirators are as well. And many of these people are not big names. They don't have huge followings. And this is going to be an incredibly expensive case to defend themselves in. Now, Trump, according to the New York Times, has often rebuffed requests for financial help from co-defendants in other cases against him. In the Georgia case, the amount of money the other defendants are able to raise could actually determine whether they choose to fight their charges or take plea deals, which should be a giant concern for Donald Trump. If these co-conspirators feel that they're not going to be able to defend themselves due to a lack of resources and due to a lack of help from Donald Trump himself, they're far more likely to take a plea deal and turn on Trump. Now, one of those co-defendants is Stephen C. Lee, who is an Illinois pastor who actually attempted to pressure an election worker in Georgia to essentially lie and confess to committing election fraud. Now, he's raising his funds by partnering with a Trump honey company. I mean, I gotta say, I need a bottle of that. Like, how enterprising.
Okay, this is my favorite story of the day because finally we've got a little bit of comic relief, okay? I mean, and this story's chock full of it. You don't miss any of it, okay? So then the guys say on their website with the MAGA honey, quote, you may like or dislike the bottle design, but it's filled with healthy, pure, raw honey. Why? Do you think that people who hate Donald Trump are gonna buy it? And you're like, no, it's okay. Don't worry that it's Donald Trump and you hate Donald Trump. It's good honey.
They're telling on themselves. They're like, oh God, we hate this. We hate this design.
Right.
But the stuff inside's really good. You might like it.
Yeah, but we can get honey anywhere. Okay, so like, why do we need to get it from Trump's dumb head? Although there is some logic to that orange guy, on a honey bottle. There's some logic. So Cheese Bro's trying to. I'll let Anna do the rest.
No, there's so much more.
Can I tell the Cheese Bro one?
Maybe, if you're good. Okay.
I don't know that I am. I don't know.
You've been very bad, so no. Okay. But no, okay. But let me finish with the honey story because there's an important detail to get to. So first off, the bottle of honey costs $20. That does not include the cost of shipping, okay? But there's an added layer, guys, because simply buying the honey does not help Stephen Lee out. You have to include a promo code, so a portion of the proceeds goes to his legal defense.
This isn't even about the legal defense.
So you have to use the promo code chaplain. And if you do, a large amount of the proceeds will be donated to his legal defense. So simply buying the honey isn't good.
And I bet that half the people misspell chaplain and they don't give it to him.
It's just, what a disaster. So let's take a look at that graphic and it'll show you what the total cost is. So with shipping, it's nearly $26. And yeah, you gotta put the chaplain in there. It's not a discount, so you will not be discounted when you include the promo code. The promo code is just to ensure that a portion of it goes to Stephen Lee.
Yeah. So Lee also has a benefactor though. They gave him $3,500. You know who it is? Silk. From Diamond and Silk. Diamond passed away. I believe it was Diamond who passed away, and Silk gave him $3,500. So he's rolling in the money. But wait till you get to Cheese Bro. So first of all, other than having the best name of all the MAGA guys, Cheese Bro decided that he's going to do one of these fundraisers online because that's what they're all doing.
Yeah,
right?
He's selling wheels of cheese, obviously.
Yeah, if he sold like wheels of cheese and called them Cheese Bros,
respect.
Exactly. And game recognizes game. Got it. Okay. Instead, he does a thing of like, I'm buried under a mountain of legal bills. Please help. Except he includes a picture of himself smiling on a big beach. Cheese, bruh, what are you doing? Okay, you know how much he raised? $20. Who's gonna give to that? $20, that's all he raised, $20. Because who's gonna give to that guy? Oh, the poor guy's suffering, having the time of his life in Hawaii or Miami or wherever he is. I've never seen Cheese, bruh, more than that. But I've got a lot more, but I'm gonna let Anna get back to it because there's two more things here that are hilarious.
So Ken Cheesebro is having a tough time raising money, but others have had an easier time raising money. It might have to do with their name recognition. So John Eastman, for instance, has raised over $500,000, $547,000 to be exact, using the same platform that Cheesebro is failing in. But then there's also another defendant, Harrison Floyd, who raised $328,000, and I don't think that he has much name recognition. So I don't know how he managed to raise more money than Cheesebro did. Cheesebro, understandably, has a much more memorable name. But as the financial burden becomes bigger, it's actually starting to weigh on the defendants, causing them to break. So Scott Hall, who's a Georgia bail bondsman, has already agreed to cooperate with the prosecution. He's one of the co-conspirators. He's facing charges. Hall, who was involved in a breach of voting software and data at a rural Georgia elections office after Trump's defeat, was originally charged with 7 felonies. He pleaded guilty last month to 5 misdemeanor charges and was sentenced to 5 years probation. You all know what a plea deal means. Plea deal means he's gonna give up some info. So if Trump is concerned about this trial, and I think he should be, I don't know if he's gonna get out of it, but if he wants to avoid additional co-conspirators flipping on him, you should maybe help him out. But I don't think he's smart enough to realize that, because he's not helping them out. This has been going on for months now, and he just continues fundraising for himself. So we'll see how it plays out for him.
Yeah, so important fact and a fun fact left. So first, Trump has a PAC called Save America. And if you think that PAC is going to save America, that's hilarious. No, it's for Save Trump. And it's for his legal defense. And he's already spent $816,000 on the last lawyer, who also quit. All his lawyers quit because usually he doesn't pay them, but in this case he did pay those guys. It's also because he asked them to lie, he asked them to commit criminal acts, and lawyers can't do that unless they're named Rudy Giuliani, which I'm gonna get to in a second. That's one of the fun ones. So Trump has plenty of money. He has a giant amount of money in that PAC. He's just choosing not to share it with the others in his usual cheap and criminal ways. So now the interesting fact, an important one, is Meadows, on the other hand, he is sharing with in a roundabout way, because Mark Meadows was his last chief of staff, and he knows exactly what happened on January 6th. And the great mystery of all of this is Mark Meadows gonna flip? Because it's one thing when rando Scott Hall flips. How much does a Georgia bail bondsman know? A little bit. But Mark Meadows and Rudy Giuliani are the two big fish. And so maybe Rudy doesn't know as much, and that's why Trump keeps treating him like Igor, right? But Meadows, he definitely knows a lot. So Meadows is getting paid $560,000 a year by the Conservative Partnership Institute. It's a policy group. So Mark Meadows is in there doing like, what other policy do you think? What do you think we should do on paid family leave? No, that's just a way of funneling $560,000 to Mark Meadows for doing nothing but being a good boy. And let me see where they got the money. The Conservative Partnership got $1 million from Save America PAC, Trump's PAC. So that's your Be a Good Boy fund. So apparently it is going to someone. It's going to his chief of staff, but the cheese bros of the world are left to fend for themselves. So now Giuliani, 3 criminal investigations, 10 civil suits, 2 disbarment things, and he's got all these bills because he was spending like a drunk sailor for the last couple of decades, apparently, according to all the insiders. And they say one of his smallest bills that he doesn't have the money to pay is a $57,000 phone bill. Bruh.
Who has a phone bill?
Who are you calling? And on what plan? He must have the world's worst plan. You couldn't figure out unlimited calls? Or are you calling like foreign governments 24/7?
Or mail order brides.
I don't know what it is.
Like there's something going on.
But $57,000 phone bill? From which decade?
He still has one of those like old school cell phone plans where it costs like 50 cents every time you text message.
Probably.
And like 75 cents every time you receive a text message.
Right.
Remember those days?
Oh my God, when I used, in the old days when you called, you'd always be like, it's not a local call, I gotta get off as soon as I can. Meanwhile, Rudy falls asleep on the line, he's still got one of those old plans. And they say this is his smallest bill. $57,000 phone bill.
That's insane.
So, and Trump's like, no.
All right. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, there's some breaking news in regard to a police brutality story that we'll share with you. We also have some updates on various labor actions, including the UAW strike. I do want to get to that. And if we have time, I also want to give you an update on the actor strike as well. That and more coming up. Don't miss it.
The biggest problem we have in the whole world, it's not global warming, it's nuclear warming.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Back on TYT. Let's go to members. We'll go to YouTube members first. Sophia D wrote in, I love you all. I feel so alone knowing the news when no one else cares. It's crazy how uneducated people are and celebrating horrors being uninformed and spreading crap. Yeah, the people who are just constantly online talking about, oh, they should kill all the Palestinians, they should kill all the Israelis. Oh, it's just so maddening.
Yeah.
How about having some empathy for both sides, the civilians?
Can I jump in and say something that might surprise and shock some of you? So before going live today, I was watching a video that Kyle Kulinski did. And I think that he did a really good job in calling out the inhumane comments on both sides. Those who seem to minimize the brutality that Israeli civilians suffered, and those who seem to have absolutely no concern for Palestinian civilians. But he also made a point that I think is true, that rings true. He said something about how, for those who are like terminally online, they're more likely at this point to have the wrong take on these issues.
Yeah.
People who are more checked out tend to have more humanity in the way that they react to these stories.
Because social media is driving hatred and fear and panic and all the wrong emotions. So don't get caught up in that. Zubono writes, and I appreciate Cenk's honesty and enthusiasm. Just make sure Cenk relaxes off air and rediscovers some peace of mind. We love Cenk and Anna.
Yeah, no chance. That's not gonna happen.
Thank you, but we appreciate you. A little bit later I will, but not now. Nicole says, I can't explain how much I love Cenk. Wow, thank you. He manages to make me laugh, some comic relief when he talks about how selfish and disgusting Trump is. I appreciate you, Nicole, I really do. Yeah. Cenk's Raging Emotion said, Trump is an absolute genius at knowing absolutely nothing. The Albert Einstein of not knowingness. If he said that, there's some chance his followers would be like, yeah, that's right, he's the best at knowing nothing. All right, Screed Hart says, please Israel, please show mercy to the Palestinian people. Show mercy. If prayer worked, that would be my prayer. Thank you for having that prayer. Kip DR wrote in, targeting Hamas is anything Israel says it is. And that is sometimes true that of course they target Hamas, and sometimes they go way too far. Yes. Donald's Enraged Mushroom says it would be nice to have electricity to call in potential tips on hostage whereabouts. That's also true. There's probably ways around that if they really wanted to. Let's keep it real. Doodoo B says, yeah, that'll work. What if one hostage dies? No power and water forever. That's a good point I hadn't considered. If there's no power, it also hurts the hostages. Embrace Your Darkness on Twitch had a great point. Fonnie Willis along with Sean Fain should be candidates to Turk of the Year. Here to that. Blackie Chan 00 wrote, and I just heartbroken over all the innocent lives lost. None of them asked for this.
Totally.
Yeah,
I agree.
Killer, thank you for gifting 2-tier subs on Twitch. We appreciate you. We'll be back. Okay, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and also KGN8, Net88, and BK Dan. You guys are awesome for signing up. They hit the join button below. I'm going to read one comment from one of our members on TYT.com. Trista wrote in, and a lot of this surprised me. Based on your earlier comments, I had no idea. I will admit here, I'm a San Francisco Republican, which basically means a Reaganite and a Friedmanite, laissez-faire economics, strong national defense, and direct assistance through a negative income tax to those Americans in need. However, the current Republican Party is loathsome. I have been a TYT member for 4 years because I find the TYT community, hosts, members, contributors, to be a very loving and reasonable one. And I believe that everyone's heart is definitely in the right place. Anyways, love you all. Just thought it appropriate to admit my honest perspective. Trista, that kind of blew me away because I remember a lot of your comments and I thought for sure that you were progressive. And so that to me means you are wonderfully open-minded.
Yes.
Right, and that's exactly what we want here. Open-minded, open-hearted, and you fit that bill perfectly. Thank you for looking out and finding different sources and finding different things you agree and disagree with on. We're all humans, we all have slightly different perspectives. Of course we're gonna agree a little bit and disagree a little bit. It would be weird if we didn't.
Totally,
So I can't love that comment enough. That's why I wanted to make sure to share it with all you guys.
That was awesome, Trista. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so I wanted to kind of fill you all in on some of the strikes that are taking place in the country, starting with the UAW strike. So let's get to that.
AP's got a piece this morning on public approval of either the automakers or the unions. You want to know percentage that favor the automakers?
Oh my!
It's like 6%, 9%, something below 10.
I was shocked at that. I thought that perhaps there would be people who say, you know what? I have a F-150. I love it, and they do a great job, and the workers are being greedy. And no, the workers win.
Oh, that was awesome. That was like the greatest thing I've ever seen. I'm sorry, can I just say one? Like when Jim Cramer looks defeated.
Oh, it was so good.
Oh, that was like that. Oh, I hadn't seen it. When he's like, the workers win. I was like, yes, yes. Like our goal in life should be to defeat CNBC anchors.
Dude, Jimmy boy, okay. Most Americans work and they work hard. And they know what it's like to feel like they aren't getting their fair share. Most people don't have cushy jobs in front of a camera. Most people don't get paid, millions of dollars in broadcast media contracts. So the reason why he doesn't understand why Americans are supportive of the UAW workers and their strike, it's because he doesn't understand what it means to be a worker. That's why that disconnect exists. He's like, wait, I don't understand. Isn't everyone heavily invested in the big three? And aren't they worried about the value of those shares going down? No, Jimmy, no. Most Americans want a fair wage. They want better working conditions. They want a piece of the pie that makes sense. That's the reality of the situation. So let's take a look.
Can I say one more thing about Jim Cramer's wonderfully defeated attitude? He's like, I thought a lot of Americans would like their Ford 150. But wait, finish the thought, Jim. So then you thought, since they like their truck, that they would be like, yeah, I'm so proud of those Ford executives. I am rooting for that corporation so much.
Yeah.
I hope they make a couple of more $1 billion in profits and don't share it with their workers.
Hey, Jake, who built Ford Tough?
Yeah.
Who did it?
The CEO, the COO, the CFO. I mean, you really think that real Americans think that way? I mean, look at how detached from reality they are.
It's incredible, it really is.
They're like, how come they're not thanking the executives?
So let's get to the poll that his co-host was referring to, which of course led to that reaction. So this was an AP NORC Center for Public Affairs research poll. And here's what they found. 36% of Americans do in fact sympathize with the workers in their dispute with the automakers. 9% support the automakers, just 9%. And the rest back either both or neither. Now, if you break it down based on political affiliation, 55% of Democrats sympathize with the workers. So, that's really, really good news. And only 5% sympathize with the automakers. 6 in 10 people in the AP NORC poll say they think better pay for the auto workers would be a good thing 8 in 10 Democrats and just under half of Republicans say it would be a good thing if the workers got raises. And guess what? The strikers refuse to back down. They are still on strike. And if anything, they're really heating things up, which I love to see. So after an unsuccessful meeting with Ford last night, 8,700 UAW workers at Ford's largest plant in Louisville, Kentucky, walked off the job without prior warning, which is actually a new tactic for the union. The UAW has been announcing its strike decisions on Fridays since it began their walkouts nearly a month ago. So here's Shawn Fain explaining their new tactic and decision.
Unfortunately, we've had to escalate our action. The bargaining committee here at Ford's been busting their asses, working hard for the membership. Vice President Browning and the whole team. You know, we came here today to get another offer from Ford. Unfortunately, this offer was the exact same offer they gave us 2 weeks ago. In our position, they're not taking us serious. We've been very patient working with the company on this. At the end of the day, they have not met expectations. They're not even coming to the table on it. So at this point, we had to take action. Unfortunate that the company's put us in this position, but they made it happen. It's on them. They have to own it. You know, we've been doing things a certain way. Every Friday, we've been doing Facebook Live updates to make announcements. So we had to choose to do things differently this way, and that's what we've done this time. So the good thing about this is a flexible option. So we had to make a decision. The companies aren't going to come to the table and take care of the membership's needs. Then we will react. The bargaining committees, the vice presidents, and the membership are staying united, and that's how we're going to get this done.
Shawn Fain, as far as I can tell, really does appear to be an excellent leader. Now, Ford has offered UAW members a 23% wage increase over the course of a 4-year contract, as well as cost of living adjustments. Now, the UAW has demanded a 36% wage hike and significant improvements to retirement, healthcare, and other benefits. In addition to that, considering the changing nature of automaking and the shift toward electric vehicles, Fain also wants union representation of workers at new battery plants that are still under construction. And to get a sense of just how significant this Ford plant walkout is, just listen to CNBC, and I gladly will, describe the factory.
It is the largest plant Ford has in the world. It is probably, by most in the industry, consider it the most profitable auto plant of any automaker in the United States. I mean, this is where 19.7% of their volume comes out of the Kentucky truck plant. And oh, by the way, the stamping facility and the parts that are coming out of the Kentucky truck plant, they feed into about 13 other facilities upstream.
So just to give you a sense of how much money Ford is losing as a result of this specific walkout, they are expected to lose about $150 million per week, okay, in core profit from that Kentucky plant.
So Jim Cramer's reaction is, why don't the average American care about the $150 million in corporate profits we're losing every week? Okay, so look, I don't know about the specific details of the negotiation. There's no way of knowing from the outside what's fair and not fair about what they should do with electric vehicle batteries, right? So I'm not commenting on that. But what's clear about Shawn Fain is that he's an American hero. And why do I say that? Look, this guy is, God, on the left, we are so starved for leaders, right? And strength. So number one, the guy understands PR. He puts out that video clearly explaining their position and why they did the walkout. Thank you. Union leaders for so long would do things and then they would never explain it. And they would never effectively communicate it in the press. And then they would get blamed, right? No, he's like, look, we asked them for something new. It took 2 weeks. I thought we were gonna get a new offer. And so when they insult us by not giving us a new offer and wasting our time, we said, all right, then we'll take, we'll go strike on that plan. And then when you cry that, oh my God, that plant makes $25 billion a year, okay, then why don't you share some of that $25 billion? You fall right into his PR trap. I love this guy. And so then you see that video of the workers. You know what they look like? They look like America, right? White, black, blue collar, working class. God, that was America, right? And he lines them all up behind him. He sends out the videos of them on the picket line, etc. And he's strong. This is how you're supposed to do it.
Definitely. Now, in response to the latest strike action, Ford, in a statement, called the decision to strike or walk off the job in the Louisville, Kentucky plant grossly irresponsible, but unsurprising given the union leadership's stated strategy of keeping the Detroit Three wounded for months through reputational damage and industrial chaos. Pay them what they're owed. It's not that difficult, considering the insane profits and the insane compensation package that the CEOs have been getting. $29 million in compensation in one example. Come on. And Wednesday's walkout brings the total number of striking UAW workers at the big three automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Jeep maker Stellantis, to about 33,700, or roughly 22% of the union's workers at the Detroit automakers.
All right, last thing is, look, Republican voters, our beef with is with your leaders, the right-wing media, the politicians, etc. But what are you guys doing? Why are you only at 22% supporting the auto workers? Now, a lot of them also say both, to be fair, right? So, but guys, you're also the average American worker, like we are, like everybody is. When I say we, I mean like the Democratic side, the left-wing side, the right-wing side. All real people are normal American workers. You gotta have solidarity there, man. Don't listen to your right-wing media telling you that you should kiss the ass of the companies and the corporations, and you should worship their stock portfolios. No, stick up for the average guy.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, breaking news having to do with a terrible police brutality story. One of the police involved has been convicted. We'll tell you what the story's all about when we come back.
Oh my.
Back on TYT, Honda boy Floyd wrote in on Twitch, homie needs to move to Wisconsin when he gets out of prison and do commercials for local dairies. It'd be like, what is this? And out he pops with his tagline, it's cheese, bro. I love you guys.
It's ridiculous.
Okay, Killer wrote in a couple of times, Trump stands for traitorous Republicans under mass paranoia. Well, not too bad, actually. And then said, hey guys, I would love for you to wish me a happy birthday today on my 36-month anniversary with the Young Turks. So happy birthday and happy anniversary. Who am I thanking for a birthday on Teddy Cool, right? Yeah, special day for me. Favorite movie, Mulholland Drive came out. Oh, mom's birthday. All right, well, God bless. I like Mulholland Drive. I love that song that the opera singer sings. Okay, Kruger like Freddie wrote in, I saw an Israeli baby riddled with bullet holes today on MSNBC, and I wish that I could unsee it. I am 100% with you guys on your views on this entire situation. Yes, it is all brutal, and thank you for caring. They also wrote, and I just want to thank you, Cenk and Anna, for your honest coverage of the situation and for you showing both sides and showing empathy and kindness towards all lives lost. Thank you for saying that. All right, okay, now back to fun stuff for a second. We go to our members on TYT.com. Puff the Purple Dragon says that $57,000 bill is definitely from paid phone sex. It's Giuliani, the guy who tried to get it on Borat's daughter in a hotel room.
Oh, that's such a good point. I didn't even think about that. That didn't even cross my mind. Wow.
Yeah, okay. Now, having said that, we don't know. That's just speculation. That's not a fact. Okay, but it's an interesting piece of speculation.
I'd bet money on it. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you, I hear you. You know what? We like your theory. $100 Blue Apron gift card, okay? Let's see if it turns out to be true one day. Go to rewards@tyt.com and get your reward. Wang Jun wrote in, you gotta do what you gotta do to get that money, Cheese Bro. You guys are too good, man. All right, Not a Dragon wrote in $20. Does that make him cheese broke? And he's like, this one's for Cenk.
We got him on his breeze.
Oh, his defense is like Swiss cheese. It's okay, yeah. Okay. I gotta work on that, Cheese Bro.
But he does need that cheddar to defend himself.
There you go.
We like cheese. We know about cheese.
All right, I've got time for one last one. Gonzo says, Anna, as always, you are amazing and speak to what I feel. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
Oh my. Oh my.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you. More news.
Well, there's a big update on a case involving police brutality in 2019. Some of the police officers involved have been tried, and one of them has now been convicted. Let's talk about it. Today, a Colorado jury handed down rulings regarding 2 of the police officers involved in the death of Elijah McClain. One of those police officers, Randy Rodema, was found guilty of criminal negligent homicide and assault. The other, Jason Rosenblatt, was acquitted of all charges against him, including reckless manslaughter and assault. Now, this situation occurred back in 2019, and initially prosecutors decided not to file charges. But following the George Floyd protests in the summer of 2020 and renewed attention on this case, prosecutors ended up filing charges. Now, we'll get to more details about the trial itself, but it is important to kind of fill you in and refresh your memory on what happened to Elijah McClain in order to kind of understand the charges and the prosecution. Now, McClain, 23, had just purchased iced tea from a corner store in Aurora on the night of August 24th, 2019, when he was stopped by police. Officers were responding to a report of a suspicious person wearing a ski mask and waving his arms. Now, he was wearing a ski mask. There was surveillance film, but he went to the cashier, he paid for the items, he didn't do anything wrong. McClain's family had said that he wore the mask because he had a blood disorder, which often made him feel cold. And so to stay warm, he covered all of his body, including his face. Officers questioned McClain before they tackled him, believing he was reaching for one of their guns. Officer Nathan Woodyard was set to go on trial this week, then put McClain in a chokehold that forced him into unconsciousness. And then, making matters worse, a pair of responding paramedics, also set for trial later this year, injected McClain with ketamine to sedate him after police video showed him writhing on the ground saying, "I can't breathe, please," and throwing up. Now, I remember watching the video of this, and McClain couldn't understand why they were targeting him. He had done nothing wrong. He was asking questions. They put him in a chokehold, and he was resisting arrest because he didn't understand why they were going after him. And then when the paramedics showed up, they injected him with an insane amount of ketamine, and he was a very thin guy. And the ketamine, we'll see what happens with the trial, but I believe, this is my opinion, that the ketamine ended up killing him in addition to the chokehold, Cenk.
Yeah, so a couple of the videos we've done stick with me. A lot of them stick with me, but two that really stick out is actually the guy, and I've said this a couple times before, the white guy in the hotel room who was crawling around on the knees, and they kept telling him to put your hands up, put your hands down, put your hands up, put your hands down. It was impossible to follow those orders, and then they shot him right there in the hallway. It was when he was obviously not a threat. It was like one of the grossest ones I've seen. And then the other one is Elijah, because he was definitely not a threat. He's a tiny little kid. He obviously was
no, he's not a kid. He was 23 years old, but he was very thin and
okay. To me, I'm 53. 23 is a kid, but you're right. Let's be accurate about it. He's not underage, but he's a little guy. He was like no threat at all. He's like totally perplexed, like what's going on? I'm like, how could they not see that he's not a threat? It's weird how like brutal they're being to this poor, what I would call a kid, but this poor young guy. And then they injected with so much ketamine on top of everything else, he died. So that's why this one, the result here is really important and telling.
So now, minutes after paramedics had injected him with ketamine, McClain went into cardiac arrest and passed away 6 days later. Now, the trial began last month. Both officers pleaded not guilty to their charges. Now, the prosecution argued that the officers used excessive force and that the body cam footage shows that even though McClain repeatedly states that he cannot breathe, the officers did not alert anyone of McClain's condition, let alone ease up on him. No reasonable police officer could believe that this was appropriate for someone who was handcuffed, said prosecuting attorney Dwayne Lyons. Now, while the defense did not call up any witnesses, the prosecution did in fact have several. A pulmonary critical care physician testified he believed the young man would not have died if paramedics had recognized his issues and intervened. Dr. Robert Mitchell Jr., I should say, a forensic pathologist who reviewed McClain's autopsy, testified the cause of death was complications following acute ketamine administration during violent subdual and restraint by law enforcement emergency response personnel. He testified there was a direct causal link between the officer's actions and McClain's death. And then Senior Assistant Attorney General Jason Slothaber told jurors that Rodema and Rosenblatt also encouraged the paramedics to give McClain ketamine by describing him as having symptoms of excited delirium that they had learned about in training. But he said the officers did not tell them anything about McClain's complaints that he could not breathe, something prosecutors said happened 6 times. Now, the defense argued that the officers were not responsible for McClain's death. Obviously, they're gonna make that argument, and chose instead to blame the paramedics for the ketamine injection. They also claimed that the officers could have reasonably believed that McClain was trying to take possession of their gun. Now, one of Rodema's defense lawyers, Don Sisson, pointed out that McClain said, "I intend to take my power back," which he argued showed intent. The officers had to act in the moment to protect themselves, according to the defense attorney. Now, after the rulings were given, McClain's mother was asked for comment. Outside the Adams County Courthouse, Shanine McClain said, quote, "That's what happens in divided states of America," end quote. And she was visibly upset as she walked to the parking lot. So there will be more trials to come in regard to what happened to Elijah McClain, a third officer, Nathan Woodyard, and 2 of the paramedics who were involved in the ketamine injection, Jeremy Cooper and Peter Sikchuniak, are set to go on trial in the coming weeks. They have also pleaded not guilty. Cenk.
Yeah, so look, I wasn't in the jury, of course, and so I can't tell if they were right to acquit Rosenblatt because it depends. It totally depends on what the role of each individual was. We can't get into, well, we don't like what happened, so convict them all. It definitely depends on the circumstances of each individual's action. But the fact that one of them was found guilty it's a new day. It just that this stuff never happened before, and the videos make all the difference. So if you heard a cop testifying that the other guy said, what was it about how he's going to keep his power or something like that McClain said?
Right, he's going to take his power back.
Take his power back. You might think like, oh wow, this guy sounds dangerous, etc. And they paint him as some big guy or whatever. These are the things that cops almost always do in situations like this. But when you see the video, and it's a really tiny guy, basically very skinny, very meek, right? And he says that I'm going to take my power back in a way that is like, you could tell that like a therapist or something taught him that, right? And he's trying to do it in this super confusing situation where he's being assaulted in a way that he can't comprehend, right? And cops, when people tell you that they can't breathe, a lot of them were trained to say, oh no, if you can say you can't breathe, that means you can breathe because then your throat's not really blocked. No, a lot of times it has to do with their heart and it winds up getting them killed a little bit later down the road, meaning like a couple of minutes later, because they weren't lying to you. So you got to be careful. So bottom line is, hey, we had a little bit of justice here, and whew,
and there might be more to come.
Yeah, and that's a relief. It's a relief. And so now that has led to some cops with the blue flu, which drives me nuts, right? Well, if you're not gonna let us, abuse guys like this, then we're not gonna do our job. Man, I would have no tolerance for that if I was a mayor of a city. No tolerance at all. But if these kind of convictions lead to cops being more careful as they're manhandling people, good. We're not passing any criminal justice reform that's helpful.
Right.
Like we did not do any police reform. So we changed some of the laws and that had some interesting repercussions, which we've talked about in other shows. But did we actually reform the police? I think approximately 0%. And but this is beginning to reform them de facto in real world because they don't want to be convicted. Good. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have cops. It means that the cops shouldn't kill civilians.
In our members only bonus episode, Nancy Mace is going after Scalise and pretty much calling him a white supremacist. So we've got that story and more coming up. Members only for that, tyt.com/join to become a member, and we'll see you there.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best